This presentation covers an overview of Mark Twain's novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Some general information about The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This novel was first published in 1885, 30 years after the end of the Civil War. The setting, or time and place of the novel, takes place 40 to 50 years earlier than the publication date, therefore around 1835 to 1845, before the Civil War. It takes place along the Mississippi River from the small town of St. Petersburg, Missouri, through Arkansas right up to the border with Louisiana. The genre or type of literature. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn can be classified as a picaresque novel, which comes from the Spanish word for rogue or rascal, and is a popular type of fiction which might be satirical and depicts in realistic and often humorous detail the adventures of a roguish hero of low social class who lives by his wits in a corrupt society. Sounds exactly like Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, doesn't it? Another way the novel has often been classified is as a Bildungsroman. This is a novel of formation or education, or sometimes called a coming-of-age story, that focuses on the psychological and moral growth of the protagonist from youth, in which character change is extremely important. The style of the novel uses both realism and local color and satirizes the popular adventure romance novels of the day. Some more information about this novel. The narrator, or the person who tells the story, and the protagonist, the main character, for both is Huckleberry Finn. Point of view, or the perspective from which the story is told. The story is told through the words of Huckleberry Finn, who is a naive 13-year-old boy and the son of the town drunk. He is an unreliable narrator, but Huck's vernacular and innocent interpretation helps Twain create humor and irony in his criticism of the accepted Christian values of his day. The tone is the author's attitude towards the subject. Twain's attitude towards his society is ironic, mocking the corruption of the average citizens Huck and Jim meet along their journey down the Mississippi, as well as through Tom Sawyer's reenactment of popular romance adventures of the day. The tone is also at times contemplative and sincere in its depiction of the natural beauty along the river and in the forbidden yet pure friendship between Huck and Jim. There is internal conflict and external conflict in the novel. The internal conflict that Huck struggles with is between being a good friend with Jim and protecting him from being caught and turned in as a runaway slave, and turning him in as society says he should. And some of the external conflicts in the novel are Huck and Jim versus the King and Duke, Huck versus his father, Huck versus the widow Douglas and Miss Watson, and the King and Duke versus the people along the river that they con. Now we're going to look at some of the main characters, starting with Huckleberry Finn, or Huck, as he's called in the story. The protagonist and narrator, Huck Finn, is a 13-year-old son of the local drunk of St. Petersburg, Missouri, a small town on the Mississippi River. Though Huck is from the lowest socioeconomic group other than black slaves, the reader can see that Huck is morally superior to all other characters except maybe Jim. He is thoughtful, compassionate, and intelligent, though not formally educated, and often draws conclusions that contradict the morality of middle-class white Christian, quote-unquote, respectable members of his society. The juxtaposition of Huck's supposedly immoral conclusions about what is right and wrong with what he has been taught is right allows Twain to criticize the moral hypocrisy of the so-called respectable society of his day. The next character, Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer serves as a foil, or a character who contrasts with another character, usually the protagonist, in order to highlight particular qualities of the other character. He acts as a foil to Huck Finn. A few examples are as follows. While Huck is practical and down-to-earth, Tom is impractical and lives in a fantasy world. While Huck is poor and neglected and abused by his family or his father, Tom is upper middle class, well cared for, and spoiled. Huck cannot live by the rules of civilized society, while Tom stubbornly follows the authorities of romance novels to the point of absurdity and even cruelty. And Huck is mature, thoughtful, and selfless, while Tom is immature, thoughtless, and selfish. Next is Jim. Jim is Miss Watson's African-American slave who runs away out of fear of being sold and having his family permanently separated. He acts as surrogate father for Huck, caring for him and protecting him with the news of his father's passing and the sight of his corpse. Twain portrays Jim as one of the most noble characters in the novel. He is intelligent, selfless, caring, and a loving father and husband. Twain's depiction of an African American as having strong human emotions, philosophical thoughts, and logical reasoning defies the negative stereotypes of his day about African American slaves and reveals Twain's criticism of slavery. The Widow Douglas and Miss Watson are next. The Widow Douglas and Miss Watson are two self-righteous widows who feel they are being charitable and good Christian women by caring for Huck and attempting to civilize him by teaching him good Christian values. Huck appreciates their concern but cannot stand being quote-unquote civilized. And lastly, Pap, Huck's father. Pap is a raging alcoholic and a neglectful and abusive father to Huck. He beats Huck, stays drunk all the time, and tries to steal the money Huck has in his name that he had found in the prequel to this novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Huck fakes his own death to escape his abusive father and the rest of the town, which is determined to civilize him.